Aha, now we're rolling. Hi, Manuel.
Hello.
How are you on this lovely day?
I am doing all right. I
That's
am sitting here with a shotgun in front of my face,
mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, as one does. Have you
Yeah.
also as one does? So, we've been talking about doing this for a while, and I wanted to try this out with this.
Mhm.
You ever think about sitting down and just analyzing dumb metal and just talking about whatever the hell goes on in production and shit and these weird things?
To be fair, we do that like every time I see you. There's just no microphones.
Yeah, that is a very fair point. Well, there's a reason there's no microphones. Anyway, so we've decided that we're gonna try that out and talk about this band that's been truly. I don't know how or what happened where they just started like blowing up all of a sudden, but Sleep Token's getting bigger and bigger, eh?
Yeah, yeah. So I got into Sleep Token years ago because someone was like, "Hey, check out this weird." I think it was Asa. I think it
Probably,
was our
yeah.
friend Asa was like, "Hey, do you know this band Sleep Token?" And I said, "I don't know what that is." And
Right.
Asa said, "You're gonna know what that is."
Yeah.
And that was right when the first album was coming out, and they were doing the whole like just every song had a different symbol, and the
Yeah.
whole worship
Yeah.
thing.
The
Uh, which was cool as hell. And I've like masked bands are such a cliche at this point that to see
right.
someone doing it well
Yeah.
was kind of cool.
Well, because I feel like with the whole mask band gimmick, like Slipknot kind of set the standard of that whole like everyone wears a mask and like they were anonymous for only so long until they weren't. And then like Ghost came around, and I think Ghost is kind of that band that sort of shot that cliche in the foot because they go a little
Hmm.
too hard with it
I,
sometimes. But
I agree.
yeah, but like what
They
Sleep
go they,
Token's doing
on
is
one
good.
hand they go really hard. On the other hand, like everyone knew who they were from day one, and
Right. So
like,
it's
all
like,
right, you're wearing skeleton makeup, whatever.
yeah, you could figure it out. But like what Sleep Token's been doing so far has been like, I gotta give it to him. I gotta give it to him. Being
Yeah,
able to,
they're also really cool because they're doing like pop metal apparently a thing now.
I
Just
guess.
taking
Well, I
like pop
mean,
styles and fusing
yeah,
them with nasty gent.
yeah. Well, I mean, like,
But they're doing yeah,
yeah.
they're doing a kind of pop that doesn't get done with that
No, not at all.
ever.
It's interesting because like there's sort of this I don't know if you would call it like a renaissance, but there's this like new wave of bands that have been coming out over the last like they've been around for a while, but they've had records coming out in the last like year where it's kind of following that like poppy meets like synthwave kind of thing. So like you have like Sleep Tokens doing it, Bad Omens is doing it, Dayseeker is another band
Yeah.
that's doing it with that whole like synthwave metalcore kind of vibe. And I don't know, it's really cool, but Sleep Token kind of caught my attention recently with the tune we're going to talk about with the summoning and just how like all over the fucking place it is.
It's it doesn't seem like it is until you
No.
look at it,
Yeah,
and then it is.
right. And then their third album actually just came out a couple days ago. So I decided to sit myself down last night and listen to it. And like, yo, if we thought the summoning was all over the place, there's some songs on the album that are like, and at the end of the day, like I have to ask myself every time I listen to their stuff now, I'm just like, how do they make it so seamless? You know, with
I
just
don't know.
I
I
yeah.
also, how do they like the amount of production stuff that in those
Oh
songs?
yeah.
I can only imagine the nightmare that the mix session has to be to make all that
Probably.
happen.
Yeah, and just like the amount of time spent on just getting like every little detail. So let's talk about the summoning because this is a song that like
Let's do it.
when I heard it, I was just like, what the hell is going on? And then I showed it to you, and it was described to me by a friend of mine as like the most Yusuf shit, which is kind of like the mixed bag of like it could be literally anything, and we don't know what it's going to be
Yeah.
until it is. But yeah, like
So
just
speaking of it could be literally anything. This song, you can't tell where the tonal center is
yeah,
almost at any point during the song.
yeah,
And you feel like you can, and then you talk to someone, and then they're like, no, it's over there.
right. But then
Because everything's ambiguous.
yeah,
The entire thing is just floating.
which I think is really impressive that they're able to make a song that well structured and keep everything about like the nerdy aspect of it, like the harmonic aspect of it, just completely ambiguous, right? So the beginning opens with this like just you know again the ambient. They're really a big fan of this whole like ambient idea, and it just goes into this
Mhm.
bombastic riff that I just like. I think it's a good intro for what it is, and the way that the vocals come in and everything sort of just like sits, it gives this dark brooding tone, and you have no idea what the hell's going on until things like come to a peak almost, and it's just like I don't know, it's that matched with like the kind of, especially with like the kind of tones that the guitars are using, the amount of compression on the drums too, like everything seems
Mhm.
heavy, but at the same time it's still like it's weirdly a pop song.
Yeah, and then it turns into a pop song at the end.
Yeah, which you're just like, how, what, like, like,
I think part of the way they managed to keep the structure, the thing moving so well is that they have these very defined sections
yeah,
that repeat themselves, and they don't. Someone, I actually think it was Jake from Pliny, told me a
okay,
while ago, like the reason Meshuggah works. Uh, is that they repeat these super nutty ideas so much that you just kind of get used to them. So if it was just any of the things in this song, if it was just here's this thing,
mm-hmm.
we're never going to touch it again,
Right,
it wouldn't work. None of it would work.
right,
But because you can sit in that, okay, here's that disgusting da 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 da
yeah,
da
that
da that
intro
riff,
breakdown,
and
yeah,
then the chorus, which is this really like kind of
yeah, like
floaty,
this
pretty
gorgeous,
thing, and then it yeah,
yeah, like a storm cloud
everything's
almost.
very well defined.
Exactly right, and then I feel like we can't neglect the random guitar solo that just appears. That's almost like, what did Pink Floyd do to you?
It's beautiful.
It's
It is.
gorgeous.
It
It's
is.
a gorgeous solo. I kind of want to find out what he's using for that tone, because
I have no
it's a
idea.
right. That's the thing. I have no idea either, but it's a really pretty lead tone, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if half or all of their stuff is just some neural DSP plugin.
I know, right? But it's just like, who even knows? Because like I don't know. That's the most like, again, back to the anonymous ideology of this band. The fact that like all four of them can keep anonymous. No one has any idea what the hell they are, who they are, and like everyone's just got to guess about the things they do because they never do interviews, is so much fun
Yep.
because then you can just play around with it. But yeah, so I think what's worked with that song, what's worked with a lot of the stuff they're doing, is every section is well defined, and some people aren't a fan of like taking crazy left turns in their writing, but I think it works because you have this insane just heavy breakdowns, these like these beautiful floating chorus and everything, and then it gets to just this ambient synth section that goes on for like the better part of a minute, and you're like, oh, the song's over, and it just keeps going and going, and you're like,
Yeah.
this is a while. Yeah,
And then like, why are we blues now?
right,
It
exactly.
works, but why are we blues now?
Well, because why not, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
I gotta give it to them in that like they're taking their liberties of trying to do whatever the hell they want, and it works really well.
It's also really clear that someone involved in the writing process or multiple people know everything that they're trying to do. So it's not a pop guy trying to make metal. It's not a metal guy trying to make pop. It's not a Pink Floydy blues guy trying
Right,
to do either of these things. It's at least one person who was involved in this writing knows exactly how all these things are supposed to sound.
exactly, right. And like, I'm gonna see if I can. That's what I do. I can pull it up here, right? See if this works. Okay. Can you hear that?
No, I gotta click the
All right,
button thing. Yeah.
yeah. So you have the intro, and then like, there's there's this one thing I've been. You know how do you remember that like period of time where like YouTubers were putting up reaction videos for like Ginger,
Yeah.
and like everyone was reacting to that live session recording of Pisces? So
Yep. I remember that.
I've been watching a lot of people reacting to the Sleep Token stuff because like I get it, it's completely out of left field and like everyone's surprised when they hear it. But there's some really cool production stuff I've been noticing about this song. The more I listen to it, and the more I've been watching reaction videos, one of my favorite things is in the end of the first verse into the first chorus, where so it extends that below sound and just has that covering over it. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, like
Yeah.
I don't,
Well,
man. Just from
that's
a
another thing that this song's really, really good at. Besides being very clearly defined, it's not like, um, it's not. Hang on a second. Bit out.
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So another thing that this song does really, really well is the dovetailing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So stuff like that, where piece vocal stuff comes in under the next section, or you bring back this little idea from somewhere else to transition you into that thing, or there's a moment, a really cool moment in the transition out of the intro into the chorus,
Yeah,
where it's that whole thing is basically just this E flat minor chord,
yeah,
um, and it's not really clear if it's minor, Dorian, whatever, because it's just here's this minor 9 thing. And then there's a Dorian note that happens right at the end that kind of turns into uh, a like the flat. What would that be? Not the flat 3, the 9.
the
So
nine of
it
the
hits the flat 7 and the flat 7 and the major 6, and that turns into the 9 of the B flat that it's
yeah,
going into from the chorus, which is a really cool effect.
yeah. I think like I don't know more and more, and I've been talking about this more with like as I was finishing school about how rock and metal musicians are starting to get a lot more creative with harmonic ideas. And even if that isn't the intention of what Sleep Token was doing writing that, it's awesome that they're able to create that effect in just the way they transition and the way
Yeah,
everything sounds in those transitions.
I have no idea. I know most of these guys doing these really cool harmonic ideas don't know theory on a
Right.
like uh, formal level,
Yeah.
but I think they all know they know it. They just don't know what anything's called because their ears are so good.
Mm-hmm. So they just hear it as it is, and that's just how it is, right? So, which like,
Yeah, and they're able to do all these kind of off the wall stuff
mm-hmm.
because it's just natural to them, and they understand it intuitively, if not formally. I don't know about these guys; they might have gone to music school, but
Right, exactly. So,
nobody knows because
nope.
nobody knows who they are.
Yep, exactly, and they keep it that way. But so, even from like not just a harmonic standpoint, but like even from a production standpoint, all these little things that are going on, right? Like as I mentioned earlier, this like that just keeping that going and just having that layered underneath, and then cut off into the rest of the chorus. Like two things. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, from a production standpoint, just like that idea of heavy layering with vocals, and that's not a separate take of vocals. That's from the actual lead line, which is number one, nuts, and number two, the fact that their vocalist is able to hold it that strong, that long, and just really
Mm-hmm.
keep that flow going and that energy going is like, right. And then of course, like it gets into that chorus section, which
There's
like, yeah,
Yeah, that chorus is I love that chorus.
It's
I love that
gorgeous.
chorus partially because it hits this really strong through that Dorian transition. It hits this really strong B flat,
Yep.
and then it just starts going in thirds. It's B
Yeah.
flat, G flat, B flat, D flat, G flat,
Flat.
and any of those chords could be the tonal center. You
Yeah.
don't know which one. It's that it's there. There it is.
Yeah. I feel like there's nothing wrong with a little bit
And
of
then
tonal ambiguity anyway. So
no, and a lot of this music, like uh, modern music, tends to be built off of tonal ambiguity for the most part, just
yeah.
because we did all that super strong tonal stuff a long time ago and got tired of it. But
Yep.
and then it hits that G flat, and then that G flat turns into the flat two of the chorus riff, because the chorus riff is in this sort of really unstable Phrygian, like
Yeah.
uh, F Phrygian sort of area,
Yeah.
which you still don't know if it's the intro riff.
Yeah.
The intro riff. You still don't know if that's the tonal
Yeah.
center. Yeah,
Yeah.
is that like an F Phrygian thing, or is that sort of just this unstable temporary place before you hit the E flat of the intro, or
Right.
of the like that transition area?
Yeah. Which like
We don't know.
exactly right, and like it leads to like even with the vocals, because like one thing I've sort of have gotten to learning over time is listening to a lead line or a melody line over something that might be tonally ambiguous might help you out in figuring out where exactly the tonal center is in a section of a song or in the song itself. And even like as like I'm more distracted by the fact that their vocal sounds incredible through all this, and I'm like I'll listen to it and be like, okay, certain tensions that are being sung right now, certain notes that are being sung don't actually harmonically fit within what we assume should be the tonal center of this section, and it just makes it all the
Yep.
more cool, right? And then it gets back into this just rocky feel, and then back to the intro ref of Limp Bizkit could never.
Yep. No, they could never.
Limp Bizkit should truly
Well,
never.
we don't know. I mean, I have long since ceased assuming what Fred Durst is capable of.
He's capable of
But
anything. What if he's part of Sleep Token?
oh no, what if he's the singer?
Imagine Fred Durst has an English accent and has been doing this in the entire time.
Yeah.
The crazy thing about everything that goes on, I think a lot of people when they talk about this band, they tend to focus on the fact that they're all masked, the fact that no one knows who they are, and a lot of criticism I've seen in that like they don't call themselves a metal band, but people like to sort of throw that on them as if they are, where most of their stuff is like super poppy, super, kind of all over the place. And then there's stuff like this where
I
they,
mean,
and like I get it, but at the
yeah.
same time it's like,
Genre
yeah,
doesn't people get so hung up on genre and
yeah,
like is this, progressive melodic thrash metal,
right.
or,
Excuse
upside
me,
down
I only
ambiguous doom metal. I would,
right. You're
yeah.
like you're like, excuse me, I only listen to technical medieval folk metal. What's wrong with you?
Yeah,
Like,
but it's really just a labeling system for like.
yeah,
And
which is what exactly.
sometimes things just fit into multiple labels.
Yeah,
Sometimes you've got a band that's a little bit pop and a little bit metal and a little like what's the Deer Hunter?
that's a great question.
What are
What
they?
are
Are they a
they?
prog band? Are they a folk band? Who
Yeah,
knows?
they could be anything
Uh,
they want. Like, and it's funny because the new Sleep Token album that just dropped a couple days ago, "Take Me Back to Eden," there's like two songs on it that have a trap beat and like actual straight up rapping in it, and I'm just like, sure, sure.
I haven't listened to it yet. I'll
You
get to it after
when
this.
you do, let me know because I there's a couple songs on that that they didn't release as singles that I think you might think are like wild, but Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I'm sure.
so you get to this really pretty chorus, and then we get to this whole, back to the.
It's a metalcore breakdown.
Yeah.
It's also harmonically kind of cool because it's the first time you've heard that major seven against the root
Yeah.
in a like that kind of harmonic minor sort of context. It's not because they're not hitting the third at any point, but it
No.
sounds like
The assumption is made that it is within that context, yeah.
yeah, because they've been hitting the sort of minor area before that, but then you hear that note and you're like, oh, we're somewhere new now.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh my god.
Which is a technique I love. I love to do it myself, where you kind of hold back the spicy note. You
Yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
play it at
Yeah.
all ever, and then you pick a moment, and then there it is.
You just throw it in, and then that's the moment where you listen to
Yeah,
it, you're like, ah, you know? But yeah, it's
yeah.
just but there's a little bit of, like, I guess, harmonic stability that we can understand when we're listening to it. The other thing I was going to get to that I forgot to mention is that, like, it is wild how good this band is. Just from, like, a technical standpoint, like, playing wise.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? Especially their drummer. Holy freaking, like, bro.
Their drummer, people talk about how cool they are, but their drummer, I don't hear a lot of people talking about how god tier their drummer
How
is.
absolutely, like, machine like he is in his playing. Like,
Not even machine, like his fills are
his
like,
fills are gorgeous.
what the hell
They're
just
so
happened?
pretty.
Yeah.
Because, like, there's like the almost prototypical metal fills that everyone knows that most people ripped off Mike Portnoy. Um, and then there's the stuff I'm hearing, on this song, and there's stuff I'm hearing on the rest of this album. I'm just like, where the hell did this come from? Like, so yeah. But then, right, gets back to this section, gets back to this sort of low, kind of brooding. What's gonna happen? We don't know.
Pink Floyd is the answer.
Yeah. Like, it's such a pretty solo too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then just right back to the chorus as if nothing happened, as if we're like, all right, we have lulled you away for only so long, and now back to reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, it's just everything about that is so pretty. The fact that they're just able to, on a dime, just change up the entire feel of that, going from this wild metalcore breakdown to just Pink Floyd guitar solo. I really want to find out one day what was used to track that. I do know that I think they're still partnered with Equilibrium.
I believe so,
I
yeah.
believe they're still partnered with
I believe
Equilibrium
so.
Guitars. So, hey, who knows? Maybe they used an EQ on that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, we are friends of the shop, I guess.
Yeah.
With Equilibrium, they don't
Friends.
give us anything. We
No, they
just like
don't.
them,
We're
and
just kind of their minions
yeah,
sometimes, too. Like, this isn't
we
publicity for
threaten to
you.
eat their tech on a regular basis.
Yeah, Dave, if you somehow get a hold of this, no, you didn't. But yeah, so then it gets back. It gets back to this chorus where, like, again, you know, it's so much fun. I think now, whenever I listen to music, especially when I start listening to a song like over and over again, just to hear like the little intricacies you might miss beforehand. And most people, when they listen to a song, they'll listen to like if the vocalist is there in a chorus, they'll listen to the vocalist and be like, "Yeah, vocals, right." But then you listen to like when the
Mm-hmm.
chorus comes in, the guitar and bass is just like droning on this heavy, almost like dissonant chordal idea, and then the drums just like. Like, it's those little embellishments that he does, and like me being a drummer, I can like freak
Mm-hmm.
out about and like geek out about that a lot. But it's like these little embellishments he does that I'm just like, it adds so much more. And like we've talked about this before with some of the stuff you've been writing for your next EP about throwing in little embellishments here and there if you have something that's like almost like a static groove. just throwing in like a little splash
Hmm.
embellishment or even a china or something like that to like just give it a little more flavor, if you will, right? So
Yeah, and you don't notice, like, I guarantee you, go listen to your favorite drummers and actually listen to them, and they're doing that everywhere.
oh yeah,
All of them. The,
oh yeah,
periphery, embellishments everywhere,
yep,
tesseract, all that stuff. It's just these little, especially on the cymbals, just
yeah,
little offbeat. Here's a little splash here that doesn't belong, but
yep.
it fits. It makes things more exciting.
Yeah, and it makes such a difference if you're thinking about a drum groove with or without like little embellishments. It doesn't have to be precise, but it's just like just the little things that are like a great example. You listen to like Physical Education by Animals as Leaders, and people don't really pay attention to like the little stupid things Matt Gartzka does underneath that groove because he's just locking it down the whole time.
Hmm.
But when you start to pay attention to like what he's actually doing underneath while still maintaining that whole groove, you're just like, oh, that's actually sick, you know? Like
Yeah.
it makes such a dumb little difference, and yet it's the most almost like minuscule thing that no one notices. But yeah, so going on with the song, right? So chorus, and then the stretch it. I love this part. I always, especially recently over the last like year, I've learned to appreciate vocals a lot more in metal, especially vocalists that
Yeah,
are
I mean, I
super
feel like metal
versatile.
vocalists are getting better and better.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Especially those that are like super versatile with their abilities, like being able to like scream a certain way and have like that actual like I don't want to generalize, but essentially like having clear tonality in their singing voice and not just their screaming, and the way they're able to transition from each other. Like Howard Jones is my favorite vocalist of all time for a reason,
Hmm.
because the stuff he did on all those
I got, I
Killswitch
was,
albums
I've
is just
been,
like
yeah, I've been extremely impressed by Andy Cizek
okay,
lately because it's rare that you find a vocalist who enunciates while screaming. Like, you
yeah,
can understand the words he's saying, which
yeah.
is not something that most vocalists can do when they scream.
Yeah, well, that's not to go off topic quickly because I do want to talk about Vessel a little more and like just his whole technique behind his singing and everything and like the way he does everything. That's kind of how I feel about Marcus Vick, the vocalist for Invent Animate, especially
Yeah,
on the new stuff on Heavener. Like, oh my god, it's like crystal clear.
yeah.
Yeah, like damn.
There's, what's that song?
Uh,
The screams, obviously, but this, Without a
with
Whisper.
Battle Whisper, yeah.
Without a Whisper has my favorite vocal moment of the year on it,
Mm,
where he like goops into the chorus with this like really,
yeah, this like almost
it
like
it
heavenly
sounds
kind
like
of
he's crying,
crying.
and then
Yeah,
it just smashes you in the
like
face. Like,
it's
it just,
so
the
good.
power he
Oh
puts behind that.
yeah, it's insane, and the way he enunciates his vowels too. It's so interesting because like just off like just I guess quickly off topic there, but in that chorus where it's uh with the word heaven, instead of the en sound, he gives it like an ah sound, like an ah sound, heaven, which I feel like is so interesting.
Hmm.
But the way he enunciates it and the way he does it is just like it just hits you hard enough that you don't pay attention to it as much because it fits so much more in the song if he used like an eh sound and an ah sound. But yeah, so going back to
Hmm.
like Vessel and like his fucking wild ass shit, people are theorizing
Yeah.
constantly who he actually is, like who is the man underneath the mask, and man, whoever it is, bro, what the hell? Because you listen to like even the chorus, the way his just voice flows in, there's not a lot of like heavy screaming in this song except for the breakdown section, but to be able to switch from that is like still impressive, and to keep that like tone going in a singing voice. And then when you have yeah, so just like the ending of that second chorus into this whole like bridge section, right? Just listening to this ascension. The clarity is what drives me insane in a good way. It's just like, male vocalists, unless you have that voice range naturally, aren't normally able to go, at least get up there and make it too clear. Like, it might get a little breathy at times, it might get a little nasally, but like, what the hell, man? And again, like, the instrumentals are just like doing their thing. So, right, and so, song keeps going. And it's such a simple breakdown, too.
It's very simple. It's also one of the only points where we're fully aware that this is an E flat.
Yeah, exactly, because you can sort of hear it.
Because it's just, that's the only note that's happening.
Yeah, there's nothing else going on underneath it that you're just like, okay.
So, which is another great effect, because everything up to that point has been so up in the air that suddenly, it's the Stravinsky technique of this is the tonal center because I say it is.
Exactly. He's like, I said so, therefore it is. Yeah.
But part of the reason it's so heavy is because nothing else has had that stability up until that moment.
Right.
Or very little.
Yeah. Which I think, like, again, nothing wrong with a little bit of tonal ambiguity here and there, especially in music like this, because, harmonic ideas aren't necessarily
quite the opposite. It helps. It is the sound that this is asking for.
Yeah. And then, like any good metal song, you have your breakdown, you're just, and then of course it goes to
this section. I was trying to look at the harmony for this section for like an hour and a half yesterday, and I still don't know what's going on. The best I can tell you is that it's kind of a bunch of chords that are sort of floating around G flat.
Pretty much.
That's what I got. I'm sure someone with a PhD could tell me exactly what's going on here, but it ain't me.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. I'm a big fan of, like, you and I have definitely talked about this in the past, but I'm a big fan of ambient ideas, right? And almost this like pseudo minimalistic idea that they're doing here, where it's just synth padding for like a good minute and a half of the song, but it's layered in a way.
It's also cool. Yeah, and it's also cool because it doesn't have that. They're not doing it like plenty of bands do this kind of thing, where it's just ambient. Like I think the example everyone knows is Count of Tuscany. But Tesseract's got that all over the place. But it's not the tones that they're using here are a little bit vintage.
Yeah.
So it keeps that pop sensibility while also doing this super ambient thing that they're doing.
Yeah,
which is really, really cool.
And it's interesting because it's like, a lot of bands that are going the synthy kind of route with their music, and like a lot of bands are, if they're not doing like MIDI orchestrations and sample libraries of like orchestra instruments, and they're going the synthwave instead, is there's almost this like, how do I explain this? There's this sort of generalized idea of a tone or of a sound for a synth sound in like hard rock or metal music that a lot of bands are using, and we not to, I guess, compare, but we've kind of talked about this before, where I have this whole idea of there's a sound in like death metal, and especially old death metal, of like, in like what like a lead tone sounds like. If you listen to like all the like old death records, if you listen to like any death metal-y kind of stuff that's coming out now, if there's a guitar solo in it, there's sort of this just like generalized idea of a tone for like a good lead sound in death metal. And I think that's the same thing with what bands are doing with the whole like synth wave movement that's going on. But the fact that Sleep Token is getting away with this whole, padded synth idea, and there's a piano underneath too that's lightly playing, that's just like, it just adds more to it. There's this like distorted rhythmic figure that's going on underneath. There's like sound, right? And this shit baffles me so much, because never in a million years did I think we were gonna get a band that would dive into this much production value, because there's just so much going on.
It's a lot. I doubt it's as much as your average Devin Townsend song, but
right.
it does have. I think they've very effectively figured out how to layer things in a way that isn't the standard, or not always the standard. So this section, you've got kind of that vintagey organ sound. You've got that very modern pop thing underneath. You've got the piano, which is kind of this
like, there's just cute little piano, kind of like
super well.
Something kind of like a Final Fantasy game or something. It's like, what? This is like, it makes for a good like open world kind of exploration kind of theme, right? So, and what I love about it is there's no real build up, so to speak. Like, you don't feel there's a build up. Everything's just happening at once. Even though things are coming in more and more. The piano comes in at some point. This rhythmic figure comes in at some point. And there's no idea. You don't know where it's going to lead until that.
We're blues now.
That stupid
thing. I love this section. I love how, I mean, it is your straight ahead rock and roll blues thing. Except you still can't really tell if the tonal center is B flat or D flat.
Yeah, and I feel like at this point, it's like, who cares? Because just like,
who cares, right?
Yeah, well, because the thing is, the old idea we learned in school with harmonic tension and release, and like the things I've been looking at with like rhythmic tension and release, right? You get out of a section like this ambient section, you're expecting, something, right? You're expecting it to resolve somewhere. Has just been building up this tension literally on a droning chord the entire time. And then it just goes to this, and you're just sort of sitting there like, you just sort of sit there. You're like, where the fuck did this come from? Like,
I mean, so
yeah.
To all aspiring composers out there, we love subversion of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
The trouble that people, especially beginners, make with subversion of expectation is the subversion has to be as or more interesting than the thing that you're expecting. And this is the perfect example of that, where you're expecting to go back to the intro, or to like just resolve itself out of this.
Yeah, or just completely fade out and ending,
Yeah, but instead we get blues.
We get some funky blues.
And it's awesome.
Yeah. Like, it's
and it's awesome.
Like, that's been my favorite thing about like all those reaction videos that are coming out, is when they get to this section, they hear it and they're just like, oh, okay. And then they realize what's actually going on. They're like, wait, where'd this come from? What happened? What's happening? Is this the same song? Yeah, it is. Oh, fucking yeah, it is. Like, and it's just, what I love about it is it's such a far cry from everything else that had been happening in the song up until this point. because with everything else, there's all these moving parts going. They don't really embrace silence that much, you know? And now all of a sudden, we get to this completely new idea in this song where, you know, there's breaks in between. The guitar and bass are only playing every few bars. Drums are just playing a straight up, just backbeat, right? It's truly just the twists and turns that this band is taking with their writing. I'm just like, okay, like, it's hard to do.
It's rare. It's rare that you find a song where a completely, totally new idea gets introduced at the end. Still
Mm-hmm.
feels like it belongs there, and I think
Right.
part of it is just how totally different it is. Because if it was just a new metal riff, it wouldn't work as well. But
Yeah.
it's something so different that it demands your attention.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing, right? Like, you know, there's
And yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's plenty of examples out there, in, you know, especially in metal music, where, um, especially in prog, where they'll bring back like an idea from the very beginning of the song. That's like, you know, 10.5 minutes later, and that's where they ended on. And a lot of people like that kind of stuff. Some people don't, but you know, it's this idea of almost like in classical composition with like the idea of a recapitulation in
Hmm.
compositional structure, whereas this is rather than, you know, following that or like a theme and variation idea, it's just, hey, guess what, surprise, right? It just completely takes you off guard, and like you said, that's something that really draws people in. It's something that really catches someone's attention because, you know, you look at how long it's, 6.5 minutes, right? But for this to be the last minute of the song and it's completely different from everything else, I think is really just cool because not a lot of bands can pull that off well. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Yeah. It
There's an idea uh, that you'll read about something sometimes called the terminally climactic form, which is
mm,
something that's super popular in metal these days.
okay.
You've all heard it. It's that that form where the climax is the end of the song, where the last whatever minute of the song is
Yeah.
just this big build, 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 giant
Good
thing.
thing.
Stop.
Yeah.
Uh, and everyone likes to do this. It's very fun. It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
This is like that, but not,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Kind of, because like nothing about it's so fun because this whole entire last section of the song, it doesn't build up to anything. It just plateaus right there, doesn't stray from its path, and just, you know, you just get to sit down and just be funky.
Enjoy
Like,
some funky blues for a while.
yeah, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, sure, and you know, like, it's so just. I'm surprised there's no guitar solo in this section, to be quite honest. Because, like, no, seriously, because, like, you know, oh god, Vessel's vocal tone is so beautiful. It works so well for this stuff too. It's so funny because, like, I say, you know, you'd expect a guitar solo because, like, oh, it's funky now. It's like a completely different style. Maybe they're gonna do something else, you know, like that. But there's this old thing a friend of mine and I talked about one day in regards to something completely different from music, but over a long period of time, regardless how long it is, like a few minutes or whatever, right? If it's in music, for example, there are certain ideas and effects that you should only ever use once. And if you try to do it again in some other shape or form in the other, like in a different part of the song or in a different song, it kind of takes away the value of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you
Yeah.
know, and part of why I say that is because, you know, me thinking, oh, I'm just assuming there's going to be another guitar solo, and the more I listen to it, I realize no, there obviously isn't, because, you know, you listen to it enough times, you know there isn't. But uh, maybe it's their thinking. The fact that they had that David Gilmour-esque guitar solo in the first chunk of the song that just completely takes everyone by surprise. Of like, oh yeah, here's just this very pretty guitar solo that fits absolutely really nowhere into what we've been doing already in this song. You can only do that once, right? It would be weird
Hmm.
to just throw in another like random guitar solo section somewhere in the middle. And then as the song's ending, it's just mm, mm. We were talking about fills earlier. The drums. It's so
Yep.
simple. It's just a fucking just some hi hats, some toms, and a snare, and you're just like, oh my god. Yeah, like, and again, this idea of layering and from a production standpoint, you know, at first, this first half of the section, you're just hearing it's just the drums and vocals, bass and guitar only come in every couple bars, and now as it builds up in production, it never goes up, it just goes out. You know what I mean? Like it's just stretching out almost. So it's just constantly stretching out. So now you have that synth pad underneath there, layering. You've got background vocals in, and then it just ends on that synthy ambient again. This ambient idea of you know you know what's interesting that I'm starting to think about now is the way certain things are done in effective utilization of synths and whatnot to create, not only just tonal ambiguity in this case, but when a lot of people use like ambient sounds, they try to go for this whole idea of almost like, how do I put this? Just this idea of like an empty mind, sort of just like a constant state of thinking, and that it's just everything's around you. You don't know
Yeah,
what. It's almost like pseudo
it's a
psychological
lot of
idea.
yeah, they take a lot of sounds that were in the olden days used for like meditation music and stuff,
Yeah.
and that are really really good for that, and that are constantly changing but never changing at the same time. The synths are programmed in such a way that there's movement, but there isn't change.
Yeah.
Also, that last chord is still a little bit not resolved.
No, and that like the vocals resolve it for it is the weird part, right? Because you hear like because they have background vocals underneath it layering with the ba ba, right, and that's just every bar, but you're never expecting it to resolve until x amount of bars later, depending on where they are harmonically. But the fact that with the vocals it just
Mhm.
sort of takes away from all that and just like moves it. It sort of just lands in a place where you're like, did it resolve? You can't really. And I feel like there's always a good and bad to that, and in this case it's a really good, because it leaves you with that feeling
Mhm.
of like you've gotten something out of it by listening to it all and just being like, oh, okay. And for some people they will, well, it didn't resolve, but for other people it's like kind of good that it didn't resolve, because now you have this moment of um obscurity almost, where you're just like, what the hell just
Yeah, and I
happened?
mean it fits thematically with the rest of the song
Mm,
where you don't know what's going on. I don't think it. I think it would cheapen that if it did resolve.
absolutely.
I think
And it's
not everything has to come to a conclusion. That's by very
yeah.
contemporary. Uh, hey, look, I went to music school kind of take.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's one of those things where like not a lot of bands are doing stuff like this. And to that I mean more so they're not taking the kind of wild ass risks that Sleep Token have been taking. Like,
mhm.
you know, I don't know a lot of other bands that could try and pull off throwing a funky blues at the end of a song without it sounding gimmicky. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. Because
Um,
I mean, even in the
but
stuff
part
we
of that's
do, yeah.
Vessel's voice
Mm-hmm.
fits with this. Yeah,
Right, exactly. Vessel's voice fits with
yeah. I
everything
mean,
they
I
do
don't
with the
think either.
song.
Of, uh,
Nah. Well, I mean, like, You
I
look at the stuff
mean,
we do.
you maybe could pull something like this off. My
That's true.
music's not
Yeah,
so
probably.
much.
Who's to say I haven't already? Um, but yeah, I
Uh,
mean, even in the other stuff we do, like, um, hell, the clean section of you know, Swampy, which will be on the next. This is a shameless plug for our band. The next Necronomicon Ex Mortis EP, which is gonna come out at some point later this year. That clean section in Swamp is just like it doesn't throw you off per se, but it's simple enough that it's not gimmicky.
yeah, I mean that was a very
Yeah.
it's
Or
already part that kind of thing's already part of the language of that kind of music.
exactly right. So it makes the most sense.
You're yeah.
Or you look at like
And then the tones I went with are just all right. Here's some Dream Theater,
yeah,
tons of layered guitars
which
with some chorus on it. That's what you're expecting that to sound like.
exactly. Whereas with this
You're
stuff, it's
not
like
expecting funky blues
not
at
yet.
the
You
end of a
are.
metal
Yeah,
song.
no, you never are. It's cool what a lot of bands are doing, taking like the pop approach to their writing. It's just interesting to me that Sleep Tokens really start like, I mean, not starting to. They've been doing this for a while, where it's like these like ambient, like pseudo ambient mixed with pop, mixed with like sad boy stuff. Very structured, if you will. And then they're just like, hey, remember we still play on the heavier side? And they're just, you're just like, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah. Manuel, what would you overall
Yeah.
rate about this song as we're wrapping this up? Because I'm starting to
Uh,
notice the time.
I would rate it banana out of banana.
Banana out of banana is a pretty
Um,
good rating.
that is my
Yeah,
rating.
you when you get the time, take a listen to all of "Take Me Back to Eden," the album, and
Uh,
let me know your thoughts because it is something for sure.
yeah,
And I'm
I
really
will. I'm
excited
sure be
for.
texting you
Please do because
all day about that.
I'm really excited. It's cool because I think like over the last, especially like with this year, um, a lot of metal bands are starting to release some really good stuff, and it doesn't necessarily have to be heavy. It just has to be something new, right? It goes back to actually, it's interesting. It goes back to something Mike always said about Metallica, where they had to do the Black Album, otherwise thrash metal was gonna die. Which I always found weird
Yeah,
at first. Yeah,
yeah.
and then I started to think about it
I
more,
mean,
and just understanding the idea of you have to take a change in direction at some point
I
if you want to.
think,
Yeah,
yeah. Just to wrap this up, I
no,
think for all of music, honestly, there's been a very kind of a competition between innovation and doing new things and just doing the thing that people like.
yeah,
And I think you have so many people nowadays being like, "Where's the new Metallica? We already have a Metallica,
we
right?"
exactly right.
Uh, and on the other flip side of that, you have people who are just trying to do new stuff just because it's new, and that never works
Yeah,
either because it's got to come from like you got to
somewhere.
want it, and it's
Yeah,
clear that these guys want what they're doing and are also doing it really, really, really well.
exactly. Like there has to be good intentions with what you're doing for it to, I think, work. Unless you're Periphery, who at this point is just memeing the shit out of everything they're doing and it's still working.
And it still works. I
Yeah.
don't,
And I think
whatever.
like just the idea of oh, where's the new this, where's the new that? Why? Well, this band's gonna be the new. Well, no, they're not the new this band. They're just they're them, right? Like you look at
Yep.
any thrash metal band coming up, and someone might say, "Oh, the next Megadeth, or the next Metallica," or "Yo, bro, they're the next Slayer." No one says that, but except maybe Slayer about themselves. But you listen to a band like I've been listening to a lot of Dayseeker too, because their whole like synthwave metalcore thing has been really interesting me in the way like they do their production and the way everything goes. Bad Omens has been on my radar a little bit recently, and then Sleep Token, of course, has been on just because of like like you know me well enough. I'm a fucking harbinger of chaos when it comes to the stuff I write. Like it could be anything I want, and I will try to make it work somehow. And the fact that they're able to pull this off so well is wild to me. And there's not a lot of bands that can do stuff like that because you can tell in their writing and their production. And I hear they're really fun live too. Like there's
Yeah,
truly a great amount of
I
intention
want
in
to see
what
them.
they do. Yeah, same. I know they just announced a US tour. I'm gonna see if I can fly over for one of those shows at some point. But yeah, this has been fun, Manny. I'm gonna post this up probably in the next like couple days. Start
Yeah,
do some editing. We got to do these more. These are fun.
we do. We
Yeah.
do. Obviously, take a check out our bands and shit,
Yeah.
which
Also,
I'm
by
sure
the
Yusuf
way,
will put somewhere
if you
in the
didn't,
wherever.
exactly, if you didn't know, Manuel and I are part of two very dumb death metal bands, and I really emphasize the very dumb part. One of them is called
Yeah. I don't know
Necronomicon Ex
which one's
Mortis.
dumber.
I, I mean, considering we're about to record a second EP in 3 months, I'm gonna say it's Necro.
Yeah.
So Manuel plays guitar and I play bass in a band called Necronomicon Ex Mortis, where we're based pretty much around North America because we have all our members living in different places. We just had an EP come out in March of this year. We literally recorded the second EP the week before the first one came out. Um, but yeah, we're working hard trying to get as much as we can done and do more stuff like that. We've also got a band called the Apocalyptic Sandwich of Doom, where that's gonna be dumb, gimmicky death metal at some point and prog metal, and also a Tears for
Sure.
Fear song.
You don't have to tell them that.
It's not actually a Tears for Fear song. Don't
Oh,
worry.
um,
But yeah, no. So even the stuff we do, we try to branch out with like our own influences because like Manuel and I stem from a lot of different like musical influences, where we'll just try to throw whatever we can in there. So akin to that, maybe not as good as what Sleep Token does. But we try. Anyway,
no,
yeah, you should go check out our
no.
bands. Yeah,
Check.
if you're listening to this, please do yourself a favor. If you want a musical journey of just go check out "Take Me Back to Eden" by Sleep Token, which is available now on all streaming services and everything. It's about an hour, so it's not that long of an album, but it's it's a trip. Mandy, thanks for doing this. We got to do this again about some
Yeah,
other random
yeah.
band at some point soon.
Let's pick another song, and I think Monuments is threatening some new stuff, so maybe that's going to be next. I
Ooh,
don't
that
know.
would be fun. We could do
Uh,
that. Yeah. All right, we'll figure that out.
yeah.
We'll figure that out later. But for now, I'll just stop recording and we'll be good to go.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Ah.